Do you like seeing stuff more than not seeing stuff? I know I do. If so, then check out tnvc.com for all your seeing stuff needs, because we'll be seeing you tonight. Howdy, folks. I'm Jeff Gonzalez, former Navy SEAL, founder of Trident Concept, and host of the Bulletproof Workshop powered by AR15.com, where we discuss knowledge, skills, and ability to help bulletproof your everyday performance in whatever your field or passion. Welcome to podcast 039. Now, my next guest comes from humble beginnings, but had a special experience of learning the apparel business from within his family. He came to the US to learn English and then decided to study fashion apparel and management in college. He cut his teeth in the US apparel business world, navigating several well-known and successful businesses such as LL Bean, Dick's Sporting Goods, and Royal Robbins. He found himself partnered with Dan Cost and 511 Tactical during an interesting transitional period between the traditional rock climbing and the tactical apparel line. With a single pair of pants in the beginning, they quickly moved to become one of the fastest growing companies in the nation. Innovating and evolving, they have been a cornerstone for the tactical, first responder, and outdoor community. He's a designer diva, community collaborator, product problem solver, end user innovator, and functional fashion forerunner. Please welcome to the show, Francisco Morales.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for having me over.
No, it's my pleasure.
Yeah.
This has been one that I've been looking forward to for a long time. We go back way
Long
back,
time.
a long time. Like some of the stuff as I was like remembering, I'm like, oh my God, I remember that. I remember when this all happened.
Yeah.
So, I usually start the beginning of the podcast by having the guest kind of give us an origin story. Like, where did they come from and what kind of put them on this path when they were younger? And you have such an interesting kind of beginning, like how it all started, that I feel like that's super important to help our audiences kind of learn a little bit about you. But I also want to kind of take a moment, and because of the fact that you are the face of one of the most popular brands of apparel clothing in the world, as far as the tactical community is concerned, like what has been one of the hardest challenges that you've had, like the haters when they come hating? What are some of the things that you guys have had to overcome to get to where you are right now?
It's always interesting. It's a highly competitive environment. Right?
Hell yeah.
Whether doesn't matter what industry you're in. There's a lot of competition. What we love to do is we focus on our consumers. That's our true north.
Yeah.
So we really don't let that noise bother us.
Yeah.
We're always, as you know, in the early days, we were really good product people. We knew how to make products, but we were not operators.
Yeah.
So kind of like our partnership in the beginning when we were working with you to make gloves and eyewear.
Yeah.
That process of, okay, what do you need? What do you like about your gloves? Okay, this is what I like.
Yeah.
What do you hate?
Yeah.
This is what I hate. And then making a prototype and bringing it back to you, using it on the range, and then coming with real life feedback and say, okay, here's what I would change. And then, that process of hand in glove collaboration, no pun intended,
That's a good one.
to create products, I think that has been, kind of like our secret sauce, if you may.
I love that, because when you think back to, and we're talking 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah, we're turning 20, and that was at the very
Oh
beginning
my
of
God.
511.
I was just throwing that number out there, but yeah, it actually is.
It is 20 years, yeah.
That was such an interesting time period too, because, the nylon business was, in a sense, in its fledgling moments. It was just really starting to become popular, because before then, it was really hard to get good nylon gear. You guys brought nylon gear to the consumer that had previously been excluded, because the high-end operators were all the nylon business at that point was really focused on them, and you kind of brought it to a broader market. And I love I love how that came to be, because you guys do the ability to innovate is the strength, right? But then you can innovate and still go down the wrong path. So then you kind of brought in the subject matter experts to keep you on the right path and help your innovative strength actually be recognized. That was unique. That wasn't done. That hadn't been done at all.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff, to do it at scale, when I think about making great gear, it has two parts. One, you have to design it right. You gotta get it field tested. That's a big part. That collaboration with the operators that we we still have today.
Yeah.
Is a step number one. Then, it's the infrastructure to execute the production of those products according to the standard that you design it and be able to deliver that in large quantities consistently.
Cool.
That's what differentiates
A game from everyone else.
Yeah.
And it's so good to hear you say that, because everybody wants to play an A game, but not everybody knows really what that means. And I think one of the things that you guys did, and to the best of my knowledge, are the only ones that do, is that you guys actually started a completely autonomous logistical infrastructure to support what you guys were doing overseas.
Yeah, that was a key component, and where I used to spend, the bulk of my time was, making sure that we were right there, at the point of execution.
Yeah,
making sure that, if you test the components that go into the fabric, if you test the fabric, if you test the other components that go into the bag or the clothing, when it comes out, you're kind of eliminating problems along the way.
Yeah.
And then it's easy when you get to the end of the production to take out the few that are wrong. If you don't have those systems in place.
Well, that is also one of the things that I think the consumer doesn't have a true appreciation for, is what all goes into that. The sourcing, the actual, like you said, to be able to source, to have the volume that you need to support the actual, what you hope to be the interest to take to the market. That I think is one of the things that, making a handful is one thing, hundreds of thousands is a whole new level.
And a whole new level. The good news, I think, for us has been, because we are, running a lot of engineering behind the product development, that our factories have become very automated. What that does, when I say automated, I mean, most of these products are handcrafted.
Yeah.
But you want operations to be as automated as possible, because the consistency.
Yeah.
Great point. That delivers. So, I mean, we are always striving on that continuous improvement, and we get reports, we get data, we see all the stuff, and it's just exciting to see the level of stuff that we can make nowadays.
Well, another thing that's a really interesting observation is that you guys are also, like, criticism to you is like, it's like energy. Like when somebody says, "Hey, I don't like it here, I like it over here."
Oh, we love
that. Some people take that kind of personally, whereas every time that because in the beginning, my experience was like, hey, if I bring attention to something that's not like the way they envisioned it, they kind of take offense to that, or they're put off by it. And then that means the relationship is kind of soured a little bit. So I was, up until the 511 days, I was a little reserved about that. And I remember I took a chance. The first time I met Dan, actually, this is a great story. The first time I met Dan was at SHOT Show one year. I can't remember how many years ago it was. And I was walking with some friends who had to do. They were a federal agency that had business to do while they were there at the SHOT Show. So they went to see you guys, and I'm just kind of loitering in the display area, and I can't remember who it was who came over to me and, hey, can I help you? Can I answer any questions? And I'm like, oh no, thank you, I'm good. And I was looking at, I think, something new that you guys had launched, and he's like, what do you think of that? I'm like, oh, I think it's okay. I think it's kind of nice. And then he asked, no, give me your feedback. Give me your feedback. I'm like, okay, so I take it down off the rack. I kind of put it on. I start working with it. And I was like, well, this. And the guy was like, cause I came at him like at full bore, and he was thinking maybe I might say one thing or whatnot. And I said like a whole list of things. He's like, hold on one second. And he walks away, and he walks back with a gentleman. And he's like, say that all again, but say it for this gentleman. And I was like, blah, 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 blah. And Dan was like, thank you very much. Do you mind if I get your contact information? I'd like to follow up with you after the show. And I'm like, all right, sure. And then he hands me his card, and I read his card, Dan Costa, CEO. And I was like, oh, I just like literally lambasted his product line in front of him. And I was like, but then the conversation literally, after we get back from SHOT Show, I called him up, or we had our first call. And he was just so committed to improving the product
Yeah.
line and just making it. And that became the culture that you guys have and have always had. I mean, from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think one advantage. I mean, first of all, Dan is an amazing entrepreneur.
Yeah.
But I think his formation as a chef. I mean, he was a
That's
chef,
true.
and he was in the restaurant businesses. So you know his passion for making a dish
Yes.
or a pair of pants or that
Yes.
will bring a smile or make a
Yes.
difference in the life of an operator were a big important part of our culture and something that I share with him as a value, right?
Yeah.
To make a difference and to be able to get that feedback, which we thought of it to be priceless, right? Like
Yeah.
to get real feedback about why that product is not that all it can be, incorporate that feedback to the point that I remember in the early days, sending gear down range and people be like, hey, somebody that does what I do designed these. And I will reflect on that and I'll be like, well, yeah, because we are the ghost writers.
Yeah.
I mean, these products,
Good. Yeah. I like that.
these products are not these are not our stories.
Yeah.
These are the feedback from the front lines. We're putting it into these products.
Yeah.
And then, of course, somebody will say somebody that does my job design these products because they're full of insightful
Yeah.
features.
It's so true. And kudos to you guys for that. Like like I said, a lot of companies can sometimes, like nobody wants to call their baby ugly. But you guys are like, yeah, call it ugly. Give it to me. Like, what can we do to improve it? And that I think is a noble aspect to, and it's also one of the reasons why you're successful is because you guys can do that. That's part of that innovative cycle is being able to take that feedback and loop it back in. And nowadays you see more companies starting to do it because I think they recognize, oh, wait a minute, maybe we can make a better product by doing that. And so I think you guys kind of set a standard for others to follow. Not everybody does it, but I think more and more people are starting to do it in the industry.
As humans, I think we're all reluctant to change in a if left to us.
Yes.
Right? We will all be reluctant to change, but I think whether it's a company or an individual, if you embrace change
Yeah.
as part of your either personal values
Yeah.
or your company values, like a good example is culture, right? So people always say, well, we don't want our culture to change. That's naive. Cultures are always changing.
That's true.
The question is, are you intentional in the way that they're evolving
Oh,
and changing
I like
in the
that.
direction that you want to change, or you letting it drift?
Oh man.
That's a big one.
Oh man, I'll tell you. And we've talked about this before, the importance of your culture being able to reflect, the company values and then move in a unified direction together. And when you start to see the culture and the values start to drift away, that's where you start to see problems. And I think you guys have avoided that a lot by being so again, by putting the consumer first,
Mhm.
that whole aspect of how you guys choose to lead within the company and within the industry is putting the consumer first. That stems through your values, and you can see that. You can walk into a 511. We were talking about this. Paul mentioned this. He was talking about how the first time he walked into a 511 store, he said the customer service was amazing. And so, okay, first time going there, customer service was good. It's a brand new store. You would think that. But he says every time he goes back to the 511 store, the customer service is very, it's always engaging. It's always there, always in, working with the customers and talking to the customers and trying to help the customers to fulfill their needs. That's indicative. That stems from the leadership all the way down to the storefront area. I mean, that's a powerful message.
Yeah, and the only way to be able to consistently deliver that is through a shared group of values and culture that we all embrace. I think our people, including myself, are very passionate about serving those who serve.
Mm,
So that's kind of like the common thread that
yes.
keep us all together. That's why I think you see a lot of our team members may have no served, or maybe they did serve, but they are related to somebody. Hey, my uncle, my
Yeah.
dad. We have people in the company that when they're working on a product or serving a consumer, it calls home. They
Yes.
they they have they have it tangible. They've seen somebody put a badge. They've seen somebody put it all in the line to serve their community.
Yeah.
And
100%.
that is a bigger calling than just showing up to work.
Well, it is. But the beautiful thing about that is that servant style leadership only benefits, given to others, working for others, putting others first is always going to pay back in other things that we measure as valuable. It's loyalty, it's integrity, it's honesty. All that stuff just comes out in the values of the company, which then again the consumers can recognize. They can see that, they can feel that with the interaction that they have at the store level. So I think that's huge, and I think it's also a good way to stay true, like you said, the true north. Like how do we stay true to our north? Well, we serve others, we serve the consumers. That's what we're trying to do. And as long as that maintains the focal point, you really, and the beautiful thing about that is that then you attract potential employees, potential new innovators
that aligns to that.
They see that.
We are so intentional about culture and values that our team worked really hard with an outside company to summarize, our key values, and they came up. It's actually an acronym, SUIT.
Okay.
Suit up.
Okay.
And the S stands for service.
Love it.
The U stands for unity, and I'll pass on that one because I think that has been our competitive edge. It's easy to work as an individual. Once you add more people into the pot, and it's 1,200 of us.
What?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
So, and the way that our people work cross-functionally, within departments, I never seen anything like that in my business history.
Wow.
So that unity component, and the T is for tenacity.
I like that.
And I for impact.
Nice.
Just being purposeful, driven, and that's the impact. That's where the innovation comes from. That's where we really
leave your mark.
Leave our mark.
Yes, I like that. That's great. Suit. I like that. Suit up. That's good. That's a good one, man. Well done. Whoever that company was, they earned their money for that one.
Well, it was our HR team.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good for them.
They got some collaboration.
Nice.
From this company, but yeah, they did a really good job. But again, they were just interviewing people from across the company, really digging on the key values, customers.
Yeah.
And that was the result. And I have them actually in front of my office. Like I have our mission statement, that talks about who we are, which we serve. We are innovators who make purpose-built gear for life's most demanding missions.
Yeah.
Then I have the vision, which says, we will become a global iconic brand that inspires the world to always be ready. And that, is a big part of what we do. That inspiration, that enabling everybody to always be ready.
Yeah.
Is just so important to us at 511.
Yeah. When did that kind of start though? To always be ready.
So, think about it. We were working closely with people like you,
in
the community. And as we were growing, people that were not part of the community wanted to have these professional grade products, right?
Yeah.
So now people are buying tactical bags to use to go on trips, or buying tactical pins to, hey, I'm an architect. I can use a shirt that has all these pockets.
Yeah.
And, hey, I conceal carry. So we were trying to capture what the essence of our core consumer was. And as we did some studies, we realized that it was all about readiness. But it wasn't the readiness that sometimes you see out there that is around out of fear, or like, being a prepper.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with being a prepper, but that wasn't our core consumer. That's not where their readiness was coming from. Their readiness was no, because I'm ready, I'm prepared, I trained for, I worked for.
Yeah.
I'm confident.
Yes. And it's so interesting to see that, because I think, within the last, certainly over the pandemic, we saw the importance of being more self-reliant, being more prepared.
Yep.
and how important that is. And I think, even from a national standpoint, the more self-reliant we are, the less we rely on the government, which is good because the smaller the government, the better off I think we'll all be. I'm not against government. I'm for smaller government. And I think the more that we can rely on ourselves individually, the better we're going to be as a country, not just as an individual, but as a country itself. I think that helps. So being able to spark that drive in other people and help them in whatever they're, at whatever level they're willing to prepare, you provide that kind of inspiration, which is super cool.
Yeah, and training and having the right gear in the right places is actually a fun process.
Yeah.
when you
Yeah, it is.
Embrace it. And I think back again to the confidence that when you're confident, you don't have anxieties. You don't have, because remember, if you don't feel safe,
Yeah.
your natural human tendency is to have anxiety on the back of your head. It's not like you
So
may
true.
get used to it.
Yeah.
So by being ready, by having things in the right places,
Yeah.
that all goes away.
Yeah, it's true. It does help. What it allows you to do is put that on the back burner and give your full attention to what the real problems are. And knowing that you have the capacity to support that, it allows you to focus on this right here, this problem, which is the one that's right in your face, which I've always tried to get across to my kids. It's like, no, we're doing this. They would always get oh, Dad, I don't want to have all this stuff in the car when we're driving. I'm like, well, when you do have it in the car, that's one less thing that you have to worry about. And you don't have to, if you break down on your way to the coast now, you're not as bad off as if you hadn't had all this stuff. So it was like pulling teeth at first to get them to kind of take a little time before you want to leave and just organize this and do this. And eventually now I don't have to harp on it quite as much. But I remember the first couple of trips that one of my sons wanted to drive to the coast, I was like, because that's about a 4-hour drive. And, their first time vehicles weren't
the best.
So the planning was pretty real because of that.
It was necessary.
It was necessary. But in their eyes, they don't, they only see right here. They don't see the bigger picture. So luckily they started to value that more, the maintaining, before they go on a trip, doing a little maintenance on the trip, filling up the fluids, checking the tires, doing those little things like that really kind of helped them to see the importance of it. So
but you bring a great point, Jeff. And that's, I think, where the community and 511, when I say the community, our core community of, first responders, military, EMTs, police, we can do together to bring to the everyday consumer, which is this notion that nobody wants to be lectured, right? But it's a way to show people, hey, this is how it's done. This is kind of how, to your point before, you want to be the first line of defense. You don't want to have to rely on the system to protect you, support you. Because see, if things go terribly wrong, they can only going to be able to go to a few people. They're not going to be able to go to everybody. So you want to be actually contributing.
That's exactly right. Like I can remember, we've had a couple of interesting storms in our neighbor and Austin area. We had a couple of snowstorms that shut the power off. And, we had a couple of elderly folks in our neighborhood, and without power, it was cold. It was below freezing. And I can remember, we should put some packages together, just some extra food, some extra water. We should just, we have it in, not an abundance, but we have enough that we can support and share. And, it also, I don't think you when you can help somebody like that, the what you get from that, that, it's amazing. It was like,
the feeling.
Yes, 100%. It was like so awesome. And, the next time we had that storm, not all of our neighbors, but most of our neighbors in our general vicinity, we'd get up about the same time. We'd walk outside, have a little meeting on the street, check in with everybody, see how everybody's doing. How, I had one, the roads were so bad that nobody could really get out. And one of our neighbors was, I wouldn't say ill prepared, but, it was a long time without power. And so, he was going to walk up to the main street and try to walk down to the grocery store. And I'm like, well, let's see if we can get you out there another way, kind of thing. Cause he had a vehicle that just was not going to make the road. It wasn't even worth trying to get out of the driveway. It wasn't going to go anywhere. And so it was like that kind of like helped me. Like I felt like I was contributing. I felt like I was supporting my community. I was, and it brought me back to like the Navy when I'm working in a team and when I'm together and we can rely on one another. And it was nice. It's a feeling that maybe some people don't really appreciate until you're in that kind of situation and you're the one that is the recipient of it. And then now you want to return the favor. You want to play it forward.
You want to pay it forward. So that's interesting that you say that. And I think, you guys are trained, wire, brainwash, whatever you want to call it, to work in teams, to be ready. I know being a civilian, as you said, I'm a designer, right? That's my background. I make gear. I wasn't an operator, but I've been so influenced by being around the community. Little things like, 2 is 1, 1 is 0. Those are things that come to my head sometimes when I'm like, packing a bag. I was at a time, with my team in a town. I don't want to get, in a city that had gotten a little bit rough, and I left my car keys in the room, and we were walking to the restaurant, and I immediately I just thought, if we have an emergency, my car keys are upstairs. So I'm like, I'm taking an elevator, but I would have never been that way if I had not been around people in our community that think that way. So I think, we at 511 have an opportunity again to bring that knowledge that our core end users have in a cool way, an inspiring way. Because again, 100%. Nobody wants to be lectured. We do some of that through something we call ABR academies, Always Be Ready academies. You've been involved in some of those. Some of those, are very specific. Some of those are not open to the public because it might be for our professional consumers. Some of them are, self-defense for women. Like, how is that, taught by somebody that is a subject matter expert?
I think those are brilliant.
Or things like you do, like, you're a brand, you're considering buying a firearm. What should you consider? Or you're new to CCW. How do you approach that?
Yeah, it's so true. And I love how, you're taking your platform and you're actually using it, using your power for good, trying to help educate, provide resources, give people access to information that may or may not have been accessible before, or they may not have actually thought that it was important until you kind of present it in a way that's easily digestible. I like that. I've always liked the ARB Academy format because, it's also kind of engaging with your consumer base. Like a lot of them are interested in what you have to say. And then there are those that may come to you because, hey, wait a minute, I saw this and this makes sense to me. I wonder who these guys are. Oh, wow, they actually have a storefront right down the street from me. And all of a sudden now you're engaging with the consumer.
Yeah, so, I think one of the things that I love the most about what we do and gets me excited, I know it gets excited for my team too, is the community that we have and that is growing, right? This community is coming, from the core into the everyday consumer, and it's growing and
so true
and growing. I think a lot of our consumers have a big appreciation for the military, the police, our first responders, and then to be a brand that brings everybody together and creates community is just amazing. And by the way, when people try these products that come through that process of trial and error and changes through field feedback, they love them too.
Yeah.
Do you like seeing the boogeyman hanging out with cryptids rolling dice in your front yard? I know I do. If you want to see all the crazy things happening right outside your house, check out tmvc.com.
I actually had a similar experience. I was traveling back from Israel, and I had a backpack that had, it had a team coin that was in one of those like small pockets.
Compartments.
Yes. And their form of TSA, like they were really very detailed oriented. And so when my bag went through, that coin caught their attention and they tore my bag apart trying to find it. And honestly, I kind of forgot, like I got a little panicked. Like, I'm like, whoa, wait, what are you talking about? He's like, were looking for something, and they ran it through and through. Then they started just pulling shit out of my bag, and like all my items are laying on this table, and they're like, they got like, there's another guy like opening the bag, looking inside here. Well, it's supposed to be right here, and they're like, I don't see anything, I can't find anything. So literally, I was like, what are you looking for? And he's like, it's a round-ish thing. And I'm like, can I see the bag? And I went in there and I opened up the pouch, and there it was, the coin. And they're like, oh, okay. And they just shoved everything back in the bag. I think, what's interesting too, is you help kind of become you help kind of usher in a new experience for a lot of people, with not just the brand, not just the product, not just the academy, but I think another thing that you guys really do well is that you engage with the community outside of like just the core brand, the core product line. Like again, through the examples of the Always Be Ready academies, what are some of the things that you guys are looking to in the future to try to continue to maintain that good connection with the community and consumer?
One area that is very important to our core consumers and the professional consumer is training. And you see it, right?
Yeah.
The more you train, the higher up in the operational.
Yeah.
I'm sure, as a SEAL, how much training do you guys do?
I tried to document it one time, and it's just like, I just
was it 98% of the time, or 90?
There's
80?
a lot. There's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot. And it's sometimes hard to quantify because, what qualifies as training? Well, sometimes everything, and then sometimes just a few things. So that's why I was like, trying to figure out how much training I actually underwent is going to be more challenging. Let's just say it was a lot.
It was a lot.
That's how I feel good about it. I'm like, at the end, because I really did. I literally had a pen and paper, and I was trying to document like how many hours or days or whatever. And after a while, I was just like, oh my God, this is too much. I'm just going to say it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So for us, so we created one of the reasons that we went into training gear, like PTR, we call it, which is our workout gear.
Yeah, I love it.
Really is to inspire people to get out and work out, because the first line on the training that you have to conquer is to be physically ready. There is no.
Thank you.
You have to be mentally ready too.
Yeah.
But it's tough to get mentally ready if you're not physically ready.
So true.
And vice versa,
Yeah,
right?
it's very true.
They both complement each other.
Exactly.
So when you say, what's next? Ideally, we want to make it exciting and inspire people. I love trail running. It's something that I adopted later on in my life. And when I go out there and I see the overachievers out there running with a tactile plate carrier with 20 pounds on, I go like, oh, moly. I mean, we're making a big difference out there.
I love it too, because it was fairly recently, like 4 or 5 years, when you guys took you're the official plate carrier for the CrossFit Games. Whenever they do any kind of loaded workout, like I remember watching Murph and watching the I think it was Josh Bridges who won it that year. And I was looking at the plate carriers, and then you could see they were custom fit for them, and they had all the special stuff for them, and then they got to take them with them and keep them, and like that was a big deal. It was huge,
and it still is. I mean, we sell a lot of plate carriers that are used in fitness, and when I look back, it makes a lot of sense, because when I've spoken to people that serve, they always say, I have never been in a better shape.
Yeah.
That when I was in XYZ, and when you think about XYZ, they always were carrying a plate carrier because it's so much weight, right? Like how many pounds do your kid have?
Oh my God. I think at one point, I think at my peak operating weight, I was like about 175. And I think when I wore my gear, just my plate carrier and my helmet, I think that was with all the ammo, with all the stuff that I needed to fight, I think I was probably tipping the scale at about like 230. 225 would be light, I think. So like 220 to 230 was how much weight I was carrying. Armor, vests, bullets, bombs, all
bullets.
that stuff.
I mean,
exactly. Bullets.
That's probably the
a lot of weight
heaviest.
in bullets. And it's funny too, because, I like, well, I can maybe shove this one in this pocket. I can maybe put it in this pocket. And so I started carrying magazines everywhere. But like I can remember, like, for PT, sometimes what we would do is we would have like plate carrier day. So we would go and work out in our plate carriers, whatever that workout would be. Maybe it'd be a run or the O course or whatnot. And then the rest of the day, we would just wear our plate carriers in the team area.
Just around.
Just wear them around. Just wear them around. I mean, a lot of that to get used to the weight, to get used to carrying it, but also to just recognize that's the mindset. This is what we fight in. We fight in this gear all the time. Live in the gear.
Yeah.
Be comfortable in the gear. And you learn a lot about it when you do that. You learn what you like, what you don't like really fast.
Hot points and all these things.
Yeah.
And now that we all have watches that have sensors, you can measure it too. Like, for example, if I go for a walk, I'm like at a 80 heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I go on the same walk with a weighted vest, I'm like at 110.
Yeah.
I don't get to 110 unless I'm jogging.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you can see, I mean, the
Yeah.
stress that these whether
it's-
whether it's your kid
Yeah.
or a plate carrier that you put some weights on, it just takes your game to the next level.
It's so true. And like I struggle sometimes when I get asked the question, "Hey, Jeff, what can I do to become a better shooter?" I can sometimes sit down and itemize drills and a training plan for them and all this other stuff. But like sometimes I want to just encourage them to get more fit, be more physically fit, do something for yourself. Like what are you doing to help yourself be healthy, first of all,
Yeah.
but also be prepared for, fighting is not an easy or, it's a young man's game. So the older you get, the harder it gets to
Yeah.
stay in that kind of field. So the more fit you are, the longer you can stay in the game, basically. And, I'm approaching, 55 right now, and I feel it every morning when I get up. I'm like, oh, this is going to suck. But I feel most alive when I'm actually active. I'm doing something.
It's interesting you mentioned that. So because of what we do and how we design products at 511, we go to a lot of training, not to train, but to observe. So
Yes.
we observe people training with our gear. Like we just had, one of our top designers in Florida at a sniper training, testing some of our new camos and how
Nice.
it works. So I was once at a weapon retention training,
Oh, nice.
training police officers on how to retain their weapon.
Yeah.
And they were getting attacked.
Yeah.
And I would say if you did not have any skills, there's a lot you can learn.
Yeah.
The big differentiator that day for people that were able to retain their weapon and
Uh-huh.
people that did not was their physical ability.
100%. So true. And I can tell you that, I look at it for sure. Okay. From a self-defense protective aspect, the more fit I am, the better I am. But I also try to get across to people that, the healthier you are, the more enjoyable or the longer your life will be, the more fulfilling your life will be, the more that you can actually experience life, the fitter you are. I've had some students that have come to me that, they the first day of class, it's hard. The second day of class, because it's a demanding effort. It's not a high intensity like you're doing a CrossFit game or CrossFit workout, but it is physically demanding. It's mentally demanding. And, the next day I can see them and I see they're struggling and, they're unhappy. They're not happy with their performance and they know they can do better. And, I just kind of I'm like, oh man. And then a year will go by and I'll be back in the same area and I'll see the student come to the class. Only this time during that year, they actually took fitness as a priority. They still train, but now fitness and now like the difference in their performance and the difference in their mindset. Like I've had so many students come up to me and say, man, thank you. Thank you for bringing this out in me and making me face the demons that I'm not as fit as I thought I was, or I'm not as fit as I could be. And they come back and they're just, man, and they're like everything that I throw at them, they just like, it's easy. They tackle it no problem. And life is the same way. They tackle life a lot easier because they've put themselves into that position where they're healthier. And it's that to me is another one of those really joyful moments that I have, that not only did I impact that person to help them better prepare for a, self-defense setting, but I impacted them to the point where they took their health to a new level.
New level, yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. That's amazing. Let me ask you this. I always like to kind of review things, and we kind of skipped over the childhood, but was there something in your childhood that put you on this path? Because I recall you started pretty early.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were an early bloomer in this, and you've stayed in this field the entire time.
My entire life. Yeah. You know that so the family's originally, my dad was originally from the Canary Islands.
Oh,
And
wow.
like many people at that time, this is, think about the Spanish Civil War, then the World War II comes, and there were tough times
Yeah.
in the European continent. So
Yeah.
these guys were in these 7 islands that are in the, very remote,
Yeah.
actually closer to Africa than they
Yeah.
are to Spain. And a lot of people had to leave. There was no
Oh, wow.
there were no jobs, there were no food. So my dad left and went to Venezuela, and he was a tailor. And my dad, rest in peace, he used to be obsessed with working. And he said, I'm not gonna, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to leave you guys any money. This is when talking to my brother and I, but for sure I'm gonna give you a craft.
Beautiful.
And we learn how to clean the factory, how to he little by little, he met my mom, she was a sewer
No
at one of
way.
the factories that he was working. And
Oh,
then
that's so
they
awesome.
got married. She became a CPA
No way.
later on. So she had the books and and she actually was a very amazing businesswoman.
Huh.
My dad was more of a craftsman.
Yes.
He could make anything.
Yeah.
Make beautiful pens. So my brother and I grew up working in the factory. I got my opportunity to design products, make products.
At what age did you do that?
I mean, I remember it because they started setting up the factory. I know I was 6 years old because my mom was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
Five, so, because I'm 6 years older than my brother.
Gotcha.
So I remember being at the factory, setting up the factory, my mom being pregnant, and then, coming to help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever was needed. I think the biggest part of that journey that really had an impact in my life was, just kind of seeing the difference that people made. Like
Huh.
everything was about people. And my dad always talked about people. Like everything was a conversation. He never talked about the business in the context of the business. They always talked about the people. And
Interesting.
I always tell my team at 511, like when somebody comes to me and says, I just love your brand. I just love 511. Like in my head, I'm not thinking about the logo, right? Like the 5.11, which that's what, as a consumer, you think about. I'm thinking about our people, like when
Who made it
who made it or who
Yeah.
sold it. When somebody says, I just love your brand, and thinking about, that person that I just met in our store in Turlock,
Yeah.
that I was just visiting in, or in our warehouse in Manteca that I just came from. And that's, I think one thing that I learned is, it's all about the right people
Oh,
working together.
gosh. Yeah.
I had that question for you earlier when we were talking. It's
Yeah.
like, how do you guys, with all these strong personalities
Yes.
in the teams, get people to work together?
Yeah.
Like how does the military figure that out?
Yeah. And that was a great conversation too. And, to summarize, there's a lot of different personalities, a lot of different viewpoints, but what brings us all together is the mission. Everybody is laser focused on accomplishing the mission. Um, the personality differences, the viewpoints that are different, all seem to just fade away, and unity and teamwork which is one of the reasons why I feel that SEAL teams makes a big difference, because that's the only organization in the special operations community that uses team. Everybody else has their own different way of interpreting that, but because we rely so heavily on our team members to work together in unison. Now everybody else does that, but we really personify that with the word team in our name and how we look at ourselves, how we view ourselves. We look at ourselves as a team. And so, like, and I was telling you how, there was a lot of folks that I didn't always see eye to eye with. A lot of people that, like, you see them in a bar and you're giving them, all of a sudden it gets a little tense, and maybe there's a couple of choice words, maybe a few blows, and you're back at work the next day, and then all of a sudden you're downrange, and that same person that you got in a fight with at the bar, you're back to back with, and you're shoulder to shoulder with, and there's nothing that you guys wouldn't do for one another, and you see just the mission and what we have to do to achieve that, and bringing to bear all of our all of our unified efforts to achieve that mission. And then you get back to the bar and you hate each other again. It's like it's
back to normal. So
back to the normal. But that's the thing that I think does it, is that there is the focus on the mission. The mission comes first, and everything else is second. And when you see an organization that puts mission first like that, and can keep everybody focused on moving together towards the mission, like I talk about this in some of our leadership stuff, decentralized command and control, bringing down the leadership decision making at the end user, or in your case, like the designer level, being able to make those decisions right then and there, create the agility that you need in today's, war front battlefield, if you will, the consumer market, to be able to really capitalize on being able to bring a product to market in a timely manner. And that I think is key. Like, you can bring the best product to market, but if you miss that window, you might not get the same level of success that you would have had if you'd been able to adapt quickly. And I think, again, being innovators allows you to adapt quickly to your changing environment. That's what we've always done. We've really worked hard to make that a centerpiece for what we do, is adaptability on the battlefield.
that I think is a big differentiator between high performing teams and structures versus, we all use the word team.
Yeah.
But I don't think people, really appreciate sometimes what it means. My perspective on it is that nobody's perfect, right? So
100%.
So we all have good things, we all have opportunities and challenges, but when you put a group of people together, you start getting close to being perfect, because you're bringing your strengths and your weaknesses into one unit.
Man, I'll tell you what. I remember one time I was feeling kind of bad. I was not as good in one trait that I was supposed to be good at. It was one of my weak areas. And I remember I sucked at it. Not going to lie. And one of my teammates was really good at it, right? And I always felt bad because he would have to come and help me. He would have to come and like get me on the right path or fix the problem that I created. And I always felt bad because I felt like, I'm taking him away from something else that he could do. And he's like, I'm going back to the conversation. He's like, dude, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
I'm good at this. You're good at other things. I'm going to come to you for those things because I suck at those things. You let me be good at this. Let me help you be better at it than you are. But, this is what I do. I can do this for you. And it was like a shift in my framework where, we use the term jack of all trades, master of none, right? That's kind of like that personifies, many special operations communities. We do good at all these little things, but we don't necessarily do one really, really great. And, it kind of like, okay, I don't have to be great at everything. I have those fields that I am great at, but I don't have to be great at all of them. And I remember we were downrange, and it just so happened that he took the lead on that, and it worked out. Like I felt a little bad because I'm like, oh shit, he had to come in and kind of do it and all that other business. But in the end, that's what the mission required.
Right.
The mission required that I had to put my ego aside and let him take over and let him take charge and let him do the thing that he does really well, and sit back and, appreciate that and then move on. And so it took a while for me to appreciate that. But when I saw it as a whole, it absolutely defines why teams work so well.
Yeah, it definitely does. It's actually two schools of thoughts out there. One is, you work really hard on those things that you're not good so that you could be better.
100%.
That's one school of thought. The other school of thought is that, it's not an excuse that you're going to negate those things.
Yeah.
But you probably should focus on the things, that's the other school of thought, that you're really good at.
Yeah.
Because if you focus on those, you're going to be great at it.
Mm-hmm.
In the things that you're not good at, you're lucky if you become average. Lucky.
Lucky is a good stretch.
After a lot of hard work. So really is all around, in my personal journey, like I'm not a very organized person. I'm a very creative individual. My head goes everywhere. So at work, I want to work with people that are highly organized.
Smart.
Because they do loops around me, 5 times. When I try to, organize or consume things, I can get highly overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Versus when things are not structured and are crazy, my brain loves that.
Yeah.
Like I can be all over the place.
I love that.
So whether it's your team or you're an entrepreneur that is starting a business and you don't have a team, you gotta find your way to work with people that complement you. Right? Sounds obvious, but it's difficult.
It's so true.
Especially in our industry where especially our core consumer, they tend to be the control type of person. Yeah.
So true.
I don't need any help.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I can handle the situation. And it's the opposite of what we were saying before. We want to encourage people to be the first line of defense. Yes. In other cases, we want you to rely on other people.
So true. But I mean, but that's the beauty of finding the balance, right? And I know exactly what you're talking about. Like for me, it took a while to acknowledge that I had weaknesses. I didn't like to admit that for myself. And so what I ended up doing was I ended up focusing really hard on my strengths. And then what ended up happening is at a certain point, I matured, I guess.
Yeah.
Because then I started to see my weaknesses and I started to say, you know what? I need to try to work on those weaknesses because that's only going to make me better overall. And I think that happened at the right time in my life where I was willing to accept, okay, I have all these weaknesses. Let's start working on them. And, with time and effort and patience, you kind of build those up to, like you said, maybe average. At best, but you at least work on them. And, whether it's, and here's another thing too. I love taking on new challenges that are outside of my field of expertise because like, for example, being a podcast host outside my field of expertise. And I love it. It's so much fun and it's so much enjoyable. But really what it does for me is it challenges, it kind of like sparks the part of my brain that is the problem solving part, the part that wants to kind of figure things out and how do I solve this problem? And then I recognize, okay, here's an issue. And then I have a team that I can go to and say, how do I fix this issue? They know how to fix these issues. That's their subject matter expertise. I can turn to them and say, hey, how do we do this? How does this work? And I really encourage people to look at that and try to adopt that type of thinking because putting yourself out there and putting yourself in those new positions is difficult. It's scary. It kind of like brings up some of those feels that we don't like. But man, I cannot tell you some of the best things have happened to me when I've been in those types of situations, really.
So I'm curious. I have a question now.
Go for it.
Because you just touched on a point that I was just talking to my younger son that is 15, and he's a highly competitive track runner.
Nice.
And I was asking him about something you mentioned, fear. He was just at the Nike Invitationals as a freshman.
Oh, good for him.
He ranks like one of the fastest freshmen in the country in the mile. And he was he had fear. He had anxiety before his run. And I kind of took some lessons that I have heard from people like yourself that have been downrange, and I would love to get your perspective on how do you guys manage fear? What's that dance look like? Do you have fear?
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Fear never goes away. Fear is always a part of you. I tell people like the first time I jumped out of an airplane, the amount of fear that I felt, the amount of anxiety that I felt was record breaking. I mean, here you are, 20,000 feet above the ground and you're jumping out of an airplane. And, you are that is probably one of the best ways that I could explain what fear is. And how I coped with fear was preparation. The more prepared I was, the anxiety would come and hit me, but then I would just fall back and say to myself, well, I did all the things I needed to be prepared for this. Like, we do things on the ground first. You learn how to pack your parachute. You learn how to go through the emergency procedures. You learn how to work your risers. You learn how to do your controllability check. You learn all of these in incremental fashions. And then you eventually build up to the first time you jump out of the airplane. And so, yes, I was scared, no doubt. And I can remember, I tell this story, I've told it a couple times, that I was the first jumper on the first pass in the first aircraft. So I'm it. And when we do this back in the day, you would exit the aircraft facing backwards. So you couldn't even see the ground. You couldn't even see, you were looking inside the plane. You're looking at your, what's called a chaser, and he's going to follow you out to make sure that you do everything you're supposed to do. And he's there in case of an emergency of some sort. And I remember he tells me a joke. When we get the green light, he tells me a joke and I start laughing, and then he pushes me out of the airplane. And I remember seeing the airplane tail moving away from me. And then all of a sudden, because you're at relative speed, so I'm watching the plane move away. And then all of a sudden I see the ground and I'm like, oh, okay, all right. And now I'm doing all the things that I'd prepared for. And, like after that, jumping, skydiving became something that I took on as a habit, which if you knew me as a kid, I was petrified of heights. Like still sometimes it kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, but that was something that once I kind of figured out how to overcome, and it was through preparation. Like I would get on the ground, and I can, to this day, I can tell you how to pack a parachute.
Wow.
If you put out an MT1X right out here, I could lay it out, make sure it's in good working order, pack it up, put it back in the pack tray, and be ready to jump. I mean, I might want to have somebody else check it for me, but you could do it. I could do it. I just, so, the preparation that goes into it, the focus of what you do well and staying focused on that was the key things. Like that's the best advice that I can give. If you did your work, first of all, he obviously deserves to be there.
Yeah.
That's an exclusive, that's a prestigious kind of event. So he did the work already. The fears that he has is nothing more than every other athlete that's there feeling. They're all in the same boat. They all have that fear of sorts of performance. What if I don't put in the best performance? Right. But the reality is that those coaches that are there, they already know that you can perform. And what they're looking for is they're looking for whether or not you're willing to continue to perform, to continue to kind of move to the next level. I think that's what a good coach looks at. Because if you're there because you're talented. What's the difference between the Olympic level runner and the next track star? That could be as simple as like the person that's there and putting the work in consistently, and he makes it look effortless. So my advice is, if you ask him stone cold, do you feel prepared? Yes.
And
that's it.
Then you're ready.
It goes back to that confidence that you were talking about the always be ready.
Always be ready.
Always be ready. It's the same thing. That's the simple. You could have used your catch line with your son. You could have used it. Son, always be ready.
So in a sense, Jeff, here's what I'm hearing. So in a sense, you're saying you're going to have, it's a natural thing to have fear.
Of course.
You're going to have it. What you do with that is what makes the difference.
It's
right?
true. And I think to overcome that fear, one way to overcome it is to know that you're prepared. If you know that you're prepared, then that fear is going to have less of an impact. That fear is an important part of the reason why we've survived as a species.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to go away. You can tame it, but you can never make it go away.
Is there a way to harness your fears to make you perform better, or they always have a negative impact on you?
I don't think they have a negative impact per se, unless they create paralysis.
Okay.
Right. Which is another kind of problem. You have fight, flight, and freeze, right? Paralysis. And if you get into that paralysis mode, that freeze mode, then yeah, that can be negative. But I feel as though if that fear triggers that fight in you, then you're going to be performing at the peak levels. peak levels of performance come from that level. We were talking about this earlier. How do I get back to that? Well, about the only time I can get back to that is simulate the type of environments that I was in where I was at those peak performance levels. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. I struggle with it still to this day to try to when I'm training, like I know that I'm training well, but I know I'm not training at that level. I know I'm not I am never going to get to that same level that I was at when I was downrange. I don't know. I'm sure there's somebody that can explain it from a scientific point of view. Why? It's to me, it's that laser focus that my brain was stimulated, and for whatever reason, it just picked up on stuff.
It's interesting that you mentioned that because people always ask me because they know I go to see people train and observe and learn. It's like, hey, what makes the difference? Why are the guys in the teams? What makes them different than people in other teams, perhaps? And it's funny. I say, if you took shooting as a sport, you could probably outshoot some of the guys in the team.
Yeah, 100%.
You get in front of a target.
Yeah.
And if you train a lot, you may shoot as good or even better than some of these guys. Now, when those targets start shooting back at you, that's going to make a big difference in your performance. They're actually going to get better.
Yeah.
Than
true.
Than actually, why is that? What triggers that?
Well, you know what? Again, that I'm curious about that myself. I don't have a good answer. I can tell you what I felt. I felt my brain stimulated. I felt everything around me was moving slower. I didn't feel. I know my heart rate was up. I know my respiratory rate. But all of that felt. It didn't have a negative impact. I could just recall, my brain was in I have ADHD, if whatever adult ADHD, whatever you want to call it. But in those moments, the clarity of my thought was ridiculous. I struggle to try to get to a percentage of that in these types of office environments or day-to-day environments. But it has something to do with the stimulus of what's happening. You're doing the job that you were trained for. That's one thing. You're working with guys to the left and right of you. That's another thing. You're doing this to support the mission objectives of your country and why you're there. All of that kind of helps to overcome that fear. But there's something that's inside my brain that it's a trigger. I see things differently.
It's impressive. I have witnessed it, just kind of watching people in training and seeing the difference. And I just go wow, these guys actually do better under stress than when they're not.
I see it sometimes in some of our advanced level classes. I can see the guys that really can perform at that level because they have a calmness about them that is hard to explain. It's easy to see, but it's hard to explain.
So prior of you joining the team, did you have that? Did you see some signs of that maybe growing up or did it come later? Just curious.
I think there might have been one or two episodes that maybe triggered it. But I think it wasn't until I was in the Navy that I was put in it in a lot, more frequent basis. There's one time when I was a kid and I was out, I was a Boy Scout at a summer camp thing. And I went off by myself to go climb this cliff. Again, going back to my fear of heights. I started climbing this cliff and I got about halfway up and I realized that I was in danger of, and the climb was hard. It was tough for me as a kid. I can't remember how old I was, 12 years old back then. And I remember I was at a point where if I let go, I was literally validating or, kind of convincing myself that if I let go, I could survive. And I mean, we're talking this cliff, this was about an 80 to 90 foot climb. And I'm at least halfway up it at this point. And I'm telling myself, I could survive that. Because to me, I was convincing myself that I was going to fall. And so I was trying to talk myself into I could survive that. And then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I don't really think I want to fall. And I just started to focus on the next grip. Where's the next grip? Get to that next grip. Got to that next grip. And I remember that grip was a big grip. And I felt okay, I can kind of relax a little bit here. And then I had time to take in the totality of the situation and realize, okay, I got myself into this. I got to get myself out. But I think what it did for me, that fear, then converted into a focus. And then I remember I looked for one handhold to the next handhold to the next handhold until I finally got to the top of the cliff, climbed out, stood on top of the cliff, and was like, oh, that seems like that was easy. You know, and of course, I'm convincing myself of that because I was scared to death. Literally was scared to death. And like my palms are sweating now, just reliving that story, you know, thinking back to it. It's so funny, the visceral response that I have from it. But, you know, that laser focus of just one grip, you know, take it one step at a time, which is ironic because that's what I tell my kids these days. You know, hey, when you have a problem that you have to solve, you know, I always tell them, I ask them the question, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So tackle your problem one little step at a time. Let's do this. Let me ask you this question and then we'll start wrapping things up. What do you want to be the biggest takeaway from this podcast for the listeners, our audience?
You know, I think for all of us, and I think you mentioned it, was, you know, it's one life. You gotta leave it.
Yeah.
One fun way to do it, I think, is putting yourself in places that you're not comfortable.
Love it.
Because it makes you grow.
Yeah.
You know, personally, we all get influenced by the people that are around us.
Yeah.
You know, whether we want it or,
True. 100%.
or not.
100%.
We observe people, we learn from them, they observe us, they learn from us. So why not be that person?
It's a good point.
That you know, inspires others to be a better person. And when you do that, then they become a better person, and they're going to inspire you to be
a better
person. And you know, back to basic American values. You know, I am not from this country, so I can say it freely.
Yeah,
this is the best country.
Thank you.
In the world.
Thank you.
And let's talk about why. This country has a sense of community.
Yeah.
That we got to make sure that it stays strong.
Yes.
And continues to build.
Yes.
You know, that's what has made this country an amazing place, that you have a middle class that can have aspirations to have a house,
a
car, a pool, a barbecue.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have a chance to, if you work hard, you know, to have social mobility. And,
so true.
And that there are people in this country that care about community.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we have a great community, I think all of us, you know, want our kids or our next, even if you don't have kids, ideally, you know, the next generation to be better and better. So, you know, this whole sense of building up the community and being community center, I think is a great thing. You know, we at 511 we want to do our own piece. We think around this always be ready, inspiring the world to always be ready, whether it is, you know, making it exciting for you to work out, or teaching you how to have a go bag. Or, you know, just the EDC component, you know, the everyday carry. You know, make sure you got the right tools with you, that you have that mindset. So let's all pitch in.
I love it. Oh, that's a great thing. And you know, you are right. We are stronger together than we are apart.
For sure.
100%. All right. So folks, that's a wrap. But before then, where can folks learn more about, well, maybe not learn more about you, but maybe learn more about 511?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think the best place to see us is in our stores.
Oh, I love that.
When there's this, we have around 120 of them.
I cannot believe that many.
And growing. If you are ever in an area that has a 511 store, come talk with our people.
Love that.
You know, one great thing about our products, they have a lot of hidden features. One bad thing is that they're hidden. So you're gonna have to talk to somebody to show them to you. There's a lot of secret pockets. There's a lot of reinforcement. So, you know, come and learn from the gear. If you cannot come to one of our stores, please do come to our website. We have a community area in our website that we will continue to grow.
Love it.
And if you want to get an understanding of the brand from the end user side, you know, as a first responder about 511, tell you know, somebody to tell you, hey, do you know 511? Hey, what's your experience with 511? What are your favorite products? They'll guide you through.
That's a great one. I love that one. That's a beautiful one. All right, folks. Well, that is a wrap. I want to thank you, Francisco, for coming on the show. This has been awesome. It's so much. It's been great. I want to thank our audience for tuning in. I want to thank our sponsors. And I want to thank the men and women holding the line. Check out all our previous podcasts by visiting thebulletproofworkshop.com. Learn more about me and training opportunities by visiting tridentconcepts.com. Until then, I'm Jeff Gonzalez. You're listening to the Bulletproof Workshop podcast. Stay safe or be dangerous.
Thank you, Jeff.